Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to another Pokemon TCG video. Today we're going to revisit another concept that was popular in the previous format and going to adapt it to the current standard format, boundaries crossed on. Now this Aromatisse deck was pretty popular, pretty fun deck to use, right? You get to use Aromatisse's Fairy Transfer to move around your Fairy energy. This means we can use anything that provides Fairy energy, such as this basic Fairy energy and such as this Rainbow energy. Now, these decks used to run Prism energy too. Since you would move them around your basic Pokemon, they would also be Fairy type energy, but we don't have Prism energy anymore. So that severely limits the options of this kind of a deck. Right, before you could run 4 Rainbow, 4 Prism, move them around, you could run any types you want. If something had 2 energy cost, we can use that no problem. Just get a Prism and a Rainbow, boom, you're attacking in no time. Now, not so easy. We're going to have to use things that revolve more around basic Fairy energy, and then maybe use one different energy type than we could fulfill with that Rainbow energy. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. So since we are running a more Fairy-focused deck, we do have 7 Fairy energy, as you can see here. We're going to run a couple of these Xerneas that have the attack Geomancy. For 1 Fairy energy, you choose 2 of your benched Pokemon, take a Fairy energy out of your deck, and attach it to that Pokemon. So basically you attack to get 2 extra energy in play, and the next turn you can use Aromatisse's Fairy Transfer to move it wherever you want. Pretty cool. Xerneas is also 130 HP basic, which is actually pretty difficult to knock out in the first couple turns of the game, so usually you'll get 1 or 2 Geomancy off before you actually get knocked out. And that's pretty much worth it in my book, right? If you can get 4 energy in play, that's amazing since you can redirect them wherever you want to. So Xerneas is very important for this kind of a deck, and then we're just going to run a whole slew of attackers, right? Why not? First, we're going to run Xerneas EX as Breakthrough, 60 and 32 benched Pokemon, and then X-Blast, 140 damage. Can't use X-Blast next turn, but hey, you'll probably just retreat him anyway, so that's fine. X-Blast is your big attack here. Breakthrough is a nice setup attack to hit something active and then set up something on the bench, or potentially knock out something on the bench that is retreated from a big attack already. This is a very useful card in this deck because it uses Fairy energy to attack. Otherwise, not a particularly strong card. There are many cards that outclass it, but the fact that it uses Fairy energy makes it very much worthwhile. Another card that can use just Fairy energy very well, Mewtwo EX. X-Ball, 20 times the number of energy attached to both active Pokemon. Move a bunch of energy to him, X-Ball. Pretty simple. Now these other Pokemon, we're going to be trying to take advantage of the Rainbow energy. And we only have 4 Rainbow energy, but the entire premise of this deck is to survive a hit, and then move the energy away using Fairy Transfer, and then use Max Potion to heal all the damage off of that Pokemon, then move the energy right back and continue attacking. So even though we only have 4 Rainbow energy in the deck, hey, at least we get to preserve them. They are not going to get knocked out off of the field very often, so we can afford to run all these different types of Pokemon. Speaking of conserving energy, we also have 4 Fairy Garden in this deck. Now, a lot of people may feel like 4 Fairy Garden is overkill, but I do feel like having this card early and having it often is really important. Being able to retreat without losing your energy is extremely important, so we're going to be running 4 of these in this deck, especially since counter stadiums are so prevalent, namely Burbank City Gym. Alright, so 4 Fairy Garden, I like it in this deck. You may want to swap one out for a 4th Max Potion, that's up to you, but I do like the 4 Fairy Garden in this deck. Alright, our other Pokemon in this deck. First one we're going to have is Suicune. It's a nice safeguard Pokemon, prevents all effects of attacks, including damage, done by Pokemon EX to it. So if your opponent doesn't have any non-EX attackers, well, you just send up Suicune and start using Aurora Beam. It's pretty good. Water is a great type right now, very good against Landorus EX. You can knock it out in one hit with a Muscle Band, which we do play. So Suicune is a great card to put in this deck. Sigilyph is an alternative, but I do like Suicune a bit better right now. The typing just makes it that much better. We also have 1 Yveltal EX. Evil Ball is very good, and so is Y Cyclone. I don't think I need to explain this card being in the deck. Only costs 1 darkness, the rest are colorless. So 1 darkness and then a bunch of fairy energy. Gets the job done. And lightning Pokemon are kind of on the decline because of those big fighting types. So Yveltal EX, very good once again, especially in this kind of a deck. We run 1 Virizion EX for the ability Verdant Wind. When you have a rainbow energy on your active, you'll be able to block those pesky hypnotoxic lasers. So Virizion EX, very, very important for making knockouts even more difficult. Makes sense, right? And then our last Pokemon, we actually struggle with Pyroar with this deck. Our only evolution in the entire deck is Aromatisse, which has 90 HP, gets knocked out by Pyroar in 1 hit, and Fairy Wind only does 60. So that is a losing combination in many, many ways. So we're actually going to run this Latias EX as well. Has the ability Bright Down, can't be affected by Pokemon with abilities, which means Pyroar can't hurt it. Barrier Break only does 70, but it goes through everything, so it can attack Pyroar even though it has Intimidating Mane. I don't know if this is enough to beat Pyroar, but it's only 1 card in the deck, and it might work, so hey, may as well try it. Makes sense in my book. Otherwise, you can just cut it and say, I'll use this spot for something better. But I like having it in the deck. Alright, so you've seen the 4 Fairy Garden, the 3 Max Potion, and then we're going to have 3 Muscle Band as well to add on to our attacks. Our supporters are going to be a little strange for this deck. A lot of people don't like this card, but I am a big fan of the Pokemon Fan Club in this deck. Get to search for 2 basic Pokemon, takes up your supporter for the turn, yes, but we do not have Level Ball anymore to search out those little Spritzy and Aromatisse, so Pokemon Fan Club is great in this deck, just for getting enough Pokemon in play to start doing something. This is not a deck that needs a lot of maintenance in the early stages of the game, or any stage of the game, right? You just get your energy in play, and then you get your Aromatisse, and there you go. All you need then is Pokemon, so Pokemon Fan Club is actually rather effective for this deck over the course of the game. Then we have our standard 4N and 4 Professor Juniper, and then we have 2 Colress and 2 Skyla as well, along with that 1 Lysander that I love having in all these decks. You may consider playing 2 in this deck, but 1 should get the job done most of the time. Our ace spec is going to be Dowsing Machine, just going to be helpful to recover something like a Max Potion, a Fairy Garden, heck, even that Lysander. Everything is a good option. Our searching cards, since we do have 4 Pokemon Fan Club, we're going to go a little lighter on the other searching cards. 2 Ultra Ball, and then actually 1 Evo Soda. This is great with Skyla. You can Skyla for the Evo Soda and get an instant Aromatisse if your Spritzy's been out there for a turn. That way you don't always have to discard 2 cards for the Ultra Ball. So I love having the option to just use Evo Soda instead. Garbodor is a big pain for this deck, so we're going to run 2 Startling Megaphone. Seems to make some sense, right? Get our abilities back for a turn, discarding their tool. I think you need at least 2 in this deck to compete with Garbodor. If you don't care too much about Garbodor, you can probably go down to 1 on the Dowsing Machine. Or if you play an extra Lysander or 2, you can actually just target down the Garbodor and knock it out. That's another option, but I like sticking with the Megaphones for now. And then our last trainer, I believe, is the Sacred Ash. If you see, we are running a little thin on these Pokemon. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So if we need it 1 back, we can just Sacred Ash, get it back in the deck, and then pull it back out with a Pokemon Fan Club or an Ultra Ball. So this deck has a lot of flexibility. That is the name of the game when you're using the Aromatisse deck. Flexibility, moving your energy all over the place, and taking advantage of your different kinds of attackers. It's a fun deck to use, and I certainly think it's competitive still. Not sure if it's a top-tier kind of a deck, but it certainly has some power left in it. Got some gas left in the tank. There are many, many different ways to build this kind of a deck as well. So just because this is how I have it built doesn't mean it's the right way to do it, but this is what I have right now. So let's take a look at Aromatisse in action on Pokemon TCG Online and see what a game looks like using this bad boy. So it looks like we're going to start off with a mulligan, and my opponent is going to show me Donphan and Trevenant. So we know what we're going up against at least. I do not start with the Pokemon Fan Club. Wish I did, but I did not. So a little bit of a bummer there. I really wish I would have, but I can't complain too much. let's go ahead and drop the Rainbow and the Fairy Garden onto Spritzy, and then we can go ahead and retreat into that Xerneas, since we do have the free retreat with the Fairy Garden, and then pass the turn. Would have loved to get some more Pokemon down that turn, but I think that's going to be just fine for me. An N coming out from my opponent. Got all sorts of Pokemon on the bench, a Phantump, a Keldeo, a Fanpea. So who knows what's going to happen next. We actually see a Fighting Stadium, a Muscle Band, a Strong Energy. For some reason my opponent didn't attack there. Not sure what that's all about, but I am grateful. That would have hit my Xerneas for 50, and then probably would have set it up for Donphan to knock it out next turn. Now I can perhaps afford to be a little more patient, so maybe a little misclick on the opponent's behalf, but that's okay. We'll just move along. I have all sorts of options here, but I want to be able to use Geomancy here. So I'm going to go with kind of the slower option. We'll Evo Soda, Skyla for that, then Fairy transfer up to the active, and then I can drop down another Fairy Garden, I guess. I play 4 of them, so it's nice to just be able to liberally drop those sometimes. I'm going to discard the Muscle Band with a Startling Megaphone. May as well just do that right now while I have it before Trevenant comes out and blocks my item cards. And then we'll go with the Geomancy, getting the Fairy Energy on to the bench. So now we see a DCE coming on to the Fanpea. And a Karina for Donphan. And we'll see what the item card is going to be. Could be all sorts of things. Looks like, a random receiver. Pretty clever to play that with Karina, since I can turn into your supporter for the next turn. A lot of people play Bicycle, but random receiver, certainly a nice alternative. And here we see the spinning turn, going to switch into the Keldeo EX. Okay, so let's go ahead and play that Pokemon Fan Club this turn. Get some Pokemon into play. Get a second Spritzy. I always like having 2 of those little guys down on the board so that we can, if one gets knocked out by the Lysandre, if my opponent plays a Lysandre, knocks out one of my Aromatisse, I'll at least have a backup. One of the worst things with this deck is when you're just left with no Aromatisse in play and no way to get one, and your energy's just stuck. That can be some bad news sometimes. So I'm going to go with another Geomancy just to make sure we get some extra energy out here. See a random receiver for another Karina. Probably not what my opponent had in mind right there, but hey, that's the risk you take with a random receiver. So we see another Karina grabbing the Float Stone this time. Seems to make some sense. You can rush in, retreat with the Keldeo and whatnot, and hey, there's a Bicycle as well. So looks like my opponent does play that too. And here comes Donphan once again with the spinning turn. Gonna switch into the Keldeo EX, and then that will be the turn. Alright, so here I have some options to work with. I think I'll probably play the N here. I could play a Pokemon Fan Club just to get some more basics. So those would probably be my 2 options here. N or Fan Club, and I'm actually going to go with the Fan Club here. And I'm not sure what to grab exactly. I think I'm going to grab Virizion EX. Never know when any laser shenanigans might happen. And then perhaps Mewtwo EX or Xerneas EX. Mewtwo EX might be the way to go. Probably. Or I could grab another Xerneas if I need to Geomancy again at some point. Might not be bad. I have not attached from my hand since the first turn, so kind of a bummer there. So let's grab the Virizion EX and then the regular Xerneas as well. And so I have a couple options here. Number 1, I could just Evil Ball or Y-Cyclone. Y-Cyclone would do 90, get to move an energy to the bench. Wouldn't be a bad move. But that Donphan is sitting there, and he's getting kind of scary. He's got a strong energy, got a muscle band. If a Fighting Stadium comes out and then another energy, I could get wrecked for a knockout. And that would not be cool. So I'm actually going to put out Virizion EX and say, let's Emerald Slash. Just hit for 100 damage on this Keldeo and go from there. Seems like a good plan. That way, if my opponent decides to wreck with Donphan, all I need is a Rainbow Energy, and I just knock out a Donphan that has 4 energy on it, and I don't particularly care if I'm getting hit by Spinning Turn on my Yveltal EX. It's weak or resistant to fighting, so it's going to take like 2 or 3 hits, probably 3 hits to knock out, and that's fine with me, especially if I get access to Max Potion at some point. That's a battle I want to win. So I want that Donphan to use Wreck while it, I guess I'll just accept it using Wreck, taking 2 prizes, but if I get the Rainbow Energy right here, we're going to be in great shape this game. So let's N and not get it. Okay, that turned out very poorly on many levels. First of all, I don't have a Fairy Garden, so I can't retreat. I would love to just retreat and Geomancy here. But no, now my Yveltal is just going to have to sit there and take it. So this was not a good turn of events by any means. Donphan now will be able to either put out another stadium and Wreck for a knockout, or Spinning Turn and switch into Trevenant, both of which are not favorable outcomes for me. So this took a turn for the worst, definitely. And here we do see the Spinning Turn into the Trevenant. And okay, let's see. I did draw Lysander here. So there's that, but I don't have a Rainbow Energy still. So I can't use Evil Ball. Alright, we're going to grab Fan Club and Mewtwo EX and Suicune with the Fan Club. And this turn will probably be used for Geomancy. Just get more energy in play. That way I can have enough to do all sorts of fun stuff. Alright, we'll go ahead and with the Fairy transfer, move some energy around in case of a Lysander. Don't want my opponent to get 2 prizes and my energy. That would just be bad. So let's go with the Geomancy, getting 2 energy into play. And now at least we can use Mewtwo EX, right? We can use him to X-Ball the Donphan. That's an option. So weird game so far. Really haven't been able to mount much offense. Donphan has been rolling over my Pokemon, and he's going to roll in once again. Spinning Turn into the Trevenant. And now it'll be my turn to try to do something. Fortunately, I do have Lysander here. So we can go ahead and bring out the Donphan. And I do have Mewtwo, like I said. So we can retreat into Mewtwo and X-Ball. Man, I have missed energy attachments like crazy. I would love to have a Rainbow Energy here, or just any energy to put into play, but looks like it's not going to be the case. I guess I could also use Xerneas EX to X-Blast. You know, my opponent has shown he plays several double colorless energy, so putting 3 energy onto a Mewtwo in order to knock out Donphan, perhaps not the best way to go, because then my opponent could just drop a Mewtwo and a DC and then X-Ball my Mewtwo, and I lose 3 energy. Doesn't seem like a good plan. So instead, I will go ahead and use X-Blast. Xerneas EX going to be nearly impossible to knock out this turn. I can't even fathom what my opponent could do to pull off a knockout. There's not enough energy to wreck, so it'd have to be something crazy like an Ether getting a fighting energy and then wrecking my Xerneas EX, and I just don't see it happening. Call me a pessimist, but I don't really see that happening. Now we see an Ultra Ball, we saw a Dowsing Machine for a Chorus, we see Trevenant coming out, all sorts of nonsense happening, and then a Spinning Turn into said Trevenant. So this is going to have to be the turn where I get that Rainbow Energy. Chorus for 9 is going to net me a lot of cards, and thankfully, I did get one finally. Alright, so now we can just Evil Ball that Trevenant. The cool thing about this, Trevenant weak to Dark, so just a 2 energy Evil Ball, and we will be good to go. And even if my opponent decides to wreck next turn, I will have a Mewtwo with a bunch of energy still in play, so I'll be able to knock out Donphan. So things, you know, we're losing in prizes, but the game is still very, very close. The more turns I give my opponent to power up a Donphan to wreck, though, the worse off I will be. So it's definitely going to be a tough game to finish out, but I think we can pull it off. I think we can do it. It's going to be tough, no doubt about that, but I do think we can pull this one off. All right. So a 4th energy going on to the Donphan here. And let's see. There's no fighting stadium, so Wreck would do 140, 160, 180. Wreck would be 10 short because of the fighting resistance. So, way to go, Yveltal. Way to resist fighting, buddy. And without that fighting stadium, it does mean, well, if my opponent puts down a fighting stadium, I'm knocked out. But like I said before, that means Mewtwo can come out and X-Ball. So, alright, we're just going to see a spinning turn into the Trevenant. And now we got some decisions to make. Looks like I'm in a fan club here just to get rid of it. Not a card I want to see anymore. Didn't want a Juniper. And now we have some decisions to make. It's going to be tough. Alright, so decision number 1 is to simply Evil Ball for the knockout. And that's a decent option. Then my Yveltal can get wrecked, though, and then I don't know. That's this is tough. My other option is to retreat and then side drive with the 2 Rainbow Energy. Looking back, I probably just should have Evil Balled and said, whatever. If you want to wreck, go for it. I'll have a backup. I'll have a Mewtwo ready. I'll have a Xerneas EX ready. Go ahead and wreck me. Doesn't matter. Looks like I've decided to go for the worst option, though, and that's why it's taking me so long to do this. One of those, oops, I retreated already. Well, let's make the most of it. All right, let's move to Rainbow up there and side drive. I can't really remember how many times I've used that attack in my life. Probably can count it on one hand. But hey, it does 120 damage. Take that, Trevenant. The problem here, of course, is that both my Rainbow Energy are on the active Mewtwo, and that means I only have 1 Rainbow left, and that means I probably won't draw it, and I won't be able to use Evil Ball. But we do have 3 energy sitting in the back, so if I just get any energy next turn, I can X-Blast if my opponent decides to wreck. So all sorts of crazy stuff happening here, and indeed, there is the wreck for 180 damage. Like I said, I don't think that was the right move using the side drive there. Should have just used the Yveltal EX and lived with it. But hey, I drew the Rainbow Energy, so there is that. Gonna go ahead with the Ultra Ball, discarding as much junk as possible this turn. Grabbing that Aromatisse out of the deck so we can get the second one into play. Trying to take away any cheap targets on my bench at this point. Right, if I can do that, it seems like a good idea. Since my opponent is down to 1 prize, right, a Lysander and a spinning turn could be the end of the game. And I don't want to lose. In general, losing is a bad thing. We would like to avoid that. So here we're going to drop the 4th and final Fairy Garden. Just trying to take a look back there. What is on my opponent's bench? Got a Muscle Band on the bench, Don Fan. So he's doing 60 with spinning turn right now. I'm going to max potion the benched Xerneas. That way, if my opponent does have a Lysander, I don't instantly lose. He would need a Lysander and a strong energy to beat me. And now with that startling megaphone, makes it even more difficult. Lysander, strong energy, Muscle Band. That would have to be the way to beat me. Or, I guess, Silver Bangle. And there's just so many cards to have at this point in the game. 4 Muscle Bands are in the discard pile. I could max potion here. Don't think it's even worth it. Don't see any way I can lose. If I lose, it's going to be to some crazy, huge play here that I can't even imagine or fathom at this point. So I think we are safe from losing on this turn. And then I also have the Dowsing Machine in hand. So all I really need to do is Lysander for the win next turn. Get the Keldeo active. Knock it out with any of my Pokemon. Even a Fairy Wind from Aromatisse would be a win at this point with that Muscle Band. Hitting for 80 damage. I would love to do that. The Fighting Stadium comes down to counter my Fairy Garden. I don't think that'll be entirely relevant. Let's see. Spinning turn here is doing 60. It could do 80 to my benched Xerneas EX, but it has 90 HP left. So even a Lysander here will not win the game for my opponent. The max potion, healing my stuff pretty well. See a startling megaphone and just a spinning turn for 60 damage, switching into the Sigilif. And that means we can go ahead and play that Dowsing Machine. Bring back the Lysander. Big bearded guy. Bring out the Keldeo EX and then can do all sorts of things for the win. Let's go with an Evil Ball. All right, take that Keldeo. And our Aromatisse deck is victorious. On the back of Eviltal EX and Xerneas EX and Mewtwo and all sorts of wonderful Pokemon. And we even get the mystery gift to boot, so we can see what I get in the mystery gift. But I think Aromatisse decks will always be pretty powerful. Their biggest weakness is one-hit knockouts, but hey, I guess we can even deal with a couple of those. As we saw, Donphan wrecked us a couple times, and my gift was a Lysander. I mean, I think it's actually pretty cool for newer players to get playable cards like that through the mystery box bonus, but for me, it's like, oh man, I really wanted one of those cool promos, but I'll have to keep playing. Alright guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll certainly have some more for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I'll see you guys next time.